This is the story of a woman who built her life around love, family, and sacrifice, until the man she married turned her world into a nightmare of control, fear, and a desperate fight to survive. Before we uncover this chilling story, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you never miss our videos. Let's get started. When two people share a life together for years, it's not uncommon for tensions to rise, leading to breaking points in their relationship. During these periods, emotions run high and accusations start flying. Claims of manipulation, toxicity, controlling behavior, and even narcissism. While some couples manage to work through these struggles with time or counseling, others find themselves caught in a cycle of emotional and physical mistreatment, unable to escape. The real question is, how can we distinguish between a temporary crisis and a situation where someone is in real danger? The Summers family case stands out as one of the most complex and heavily debated legal battles in recent years, taking more than 5 years to reach a resolution. On the surface, they appear to be a close-knit, happy household, the ideal American family. But behind closed doors, their reality was far more disturbing. What seemed like an ordinary domestic dynamic masked a truth so unsettling that many found it difficult to believe. As the case unfolded, shocking details emerged. When the head of the family was faced with divorce proceedings initiated by his wife, he refused to accept the separation. Instead, he orchestrated a calculated plan for revenge, one that extended far beyond typical legal disputes. In his desperate attempt to maintain control, he manipulated his own children into becoming unwilling participants in his scheme, convincing them that his actions were in the best interest of their family. Alyssa Jill Summers came into the world on February 18, 1980, in a quiet suburb of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She grew up in a modest, middle-class household. In 1995, when she was just 15 years old, she met Trevor Summers, 2 years her senior. They attended the same high school, often crossing paths between classes, at gatherings, and within their circle of mutual friends. Their connection started as a simple friendship, built on shared interests and lighthearted conversations. Over time, they grew closer, their bond deepening. Still, they didn't officially start dating until 2 years after their first meeting. Their relationship developed gradually, with both focused on finishing school and figuring out their futures. Their parents were fully supportive, pleased with the person their son or daughter had chosen. Their friends admired them as a balanced, well-matched couple, outgoing, kind, and cheerful. They thrived in social settings, often becoming the center of attention. Their thoughtful gestures and charming presence drew others in, with some quietly envying their happiness. In 2001, for years after their romance had begun, Alyssa and Trevor exchanged vows. She was 21, and he had just turned 23. By then, they had weathered enough together to feel confident in starting a life side by side. Those around them believed they were embarking on a long, fulfilling marriage. The newlyweds moved into a modest home in Philadelphia, eager to build their future. In 2003, they welcomed their first child, daughter Arden. 3 years later, Alyssa gave birth to their son, Landon. Over the following years, the family grew, adding daughter Bree and 2 more sons, Grady and Cooper. Alyssa chose to put her career on hold, dedicating herself entirely to raising their 5 children and managing their household. From the outside, the Summers family seemed to embody the image of a tight-knit, joyful home. And to be fair, in the beginning, that was their reality. But as time passed, cracks began to form, slowly but steadily eroding the idyllic picture. Trevor had taken on the role of sole provider early in their marriage. And as the family expanded, so did the weight of responsibility resting on his shoulders. Alyssa remained a full-time, stay-at-home mother, leaving financial pressures entirely in Trevor's hands. In 2004, they moved to Florida, where he launched a landscaping company. But from the very start, the business struggled. 3 years later, it shut down entirely. Determined to try again, the family relocated to Alabama, where Trevor opened a small used car rental and sales shop. Yet despite his efforts, that venture, too, met the same fate. Every few years, the Summers family found themselves packing up their lives and relocating to a new state, chasing yet another business opportunity for Trevor. Time and time again, his ventures collapsed before gaining traction. Over more than a decade, he explored countless paths: real estate, pool maintenance, flower and souvenir sales, but failure trailed him at every turn. Each attempt left him deeper in debt, yet Alyssa never wavered. Through every setback, she remained steadfast, offering him unwavering support. No matter where they landed, Trevor and Alyssa embraced their surroundings, quickly making new friends and integrating into local communities. Their home was always open to visitors. Warm meals prepared by Alyssa, hopeful conversations led by Trevor, who assured anyone who would listen that this time, things would be different. He firmly believed that the next venture would finally bring them success. But as their household grew, financial pressures mounted, and making ends meet became increasingly difficult. With his poor credit history, Trevor was repeatedly denied loans. Outside of Alyssa and their children, few believed in his entrepreneurial dreams. Even family members refused to co-sign loans, deeming him unreliable. At his core, Trevor struggled to commit, jumping from one idea to the next, desperately hoping for a breakthrough. By 2015, the Summers family returned to Florida, intent on settling down for good. Years of instability had taken their toll. Arden and her siblings found it increasingly difficult to adjust to new schools, form lasting friendships, and deal with the constant upheaval. Hoping to bring stability, their parents decided to homeschool them, believing it would provide much-needed consistency. Their eldest daughter, Arden, stepped in to help Alyssa manage the household, often caring for her younger brothers and sisters. She had always been what many might call a daddy's girl, incredibly close to Trevor, trusting him completely, and seeing him as the greatest father in the world. Over time, the dynamic within the Summers family began to shift. Despite the growing cracks in their relationship, Alyssa continued to maintain the illusion that everything was fine. As Trevor's business ventures repeatedly failed, his frustration and anxiety deepened, and his behavior became increasingly troubling. Paranoia began to consume him. He feared Alyssa might leave him for someone more successful or financially secure. These thoughts took root and grew, driving Trevor to become controlling and domineering. He started accusing Alyssa of infidelity without any evidence, growing suspicious of her every move. Even casual greetings with neighbors or acquaintances sparked confrontations fueled by jealousy. As tensions escalated, Trevor demanded that Alyssa delete her social media accounts and forbade her from creating new ones. He monitored her phone obsessively, reviewing call logs and messages, and insisted she remove every male contact, even longtime family friends. His control extended to her appearance. At first, he criticized certain outfits, claiming they were too revealing, even when they weren't. Eventually, he took over entirely, dictating what she could wear. Makeup, fragrances, and jewelry, aside from her wedding ring, were strictly forbidden. Her wardrobe became limited to modest, dull, and conservative clothing. Trevor's grip tightened further. He banned Alyssa from driving, confiscated her phone, and eventually stopped allowing her to leave the house altogether. Whenever he left, he locked her inside with their younger children. The only family member permitted to come and go freely was their eldest daughter, Arden. Trevor often took her along on errands, attempting to convince her that his actions were for the family's benefit. Trevor monitored every detail of their lives, where each family member was, who they spoke to, what they ate. This control seemed to give him a sense of power and satisfaction. Alyssa, however, bore the brunt of this oppressive environment. She was constantly criticized, emotionally manipulated, and blamed for every failure in Trevor's life. After 15 years of marriage, Alyssa finally told Trevor she wanted a divorce. She could no longer endure the suffocating conditions of their home. His reaction was swift and cruel. He slapped her, hurled insults, and declared her worthless, insisting no one would want her as a single mother. From that moment, the household rules became even more restrictive. Around the same time, Trevor came under police investigation for financial misconduct and was placed under house arrest. Being confined with him became unbearable for Alyssa. It was during this period that she realized she could no longer share a home with him. In October 2016, Alyssa found herself once again trapped within the walls of their home. For 2 weeks, Trevor refused to let her step outside. The situation had become increasingly dangerous, with Trevor watching her every move. Isolated from the outside world, Alyssa had no way to seek help. Then, a narrow window of opportunity presented itself. One day, while Trevor, no longer under investigation, left the house for a few hours, Alyssa managed to find a phone and called emergency services. She reported the ongoing mistreatment and revealed that her husband had been keeping her locked up. The call was abruptly cut short when Trevor returned unexpectedly, but authorities had already traced the address and dispatched officers. Law enforcement arrived at the Summers residence just as Trevor resumed verbally and emotionally berating Alyssa. It's important to note that Trevor had learned to avoid leaving visible injuries. His methods were primarily psychological, though he occasionally resorted to physical intimidation. Slaps, pulling her hair, and other forms of punishment designed to instill fear without leaving a trace. Trevor's behavior included inappropriate personal actions that were never openly discussed. When officers arrived at the Summers residence, Trevor appeared startled and hesitant to let them in. Hoping to avoid arrest, he eventually agreed to release Alyssa and the children. He insisted that no one had been held against their will, portraying Alyssa as unreliable and untrustworthy. Once free from her controlling husband, Alyssa faced an immediate challenge. She and her children had nowhere to go. They left with no belongings, no money, and no plan. Following law enforcement's advice, Alyssa reached out to a local support service for individuals affected by domestic conflict. There, she and the kids were provided with temporary shelter, meals, and essential supplies. Alyssa wasted no time. Determined to rebuild their lives, she began searching for a job. Her efforts soon paid off. She was hired by a local company and managed to rent a modest yet cozy home. Slowly but surely, Alyssa and her children began to stabilize, creating a new life in a safer environment. At the same time, Alyssa filed for divorce. Hoping to avoid further conflict and maintain peace for her children's sake, she chose not to press formal charges against Trevor for his past actions. She hoped the separation could be finalized without hostility. Initially, Trevor repeatedly contacted her, urging her to return, but over time, he seemed to accept the situation and backed off, at least outwardly. 6 months after the separation, Alyssa finally began to feel a sense of freedom. For the first time in years, she lived without constantly looking over her shoulder. She started opening up to new people, hoping to rebuild her personal life. During this time, she met Jeffrey Matt, and by spring 2017, their friendship blossomed into a romantic relationship. Once the divorce was finalized, Alyssa and Trevor agreed on a shared custody arrangement. The children would primarily live with Alyssa, while Trevor could visit them twice a week and take them for overnight stays on weekends. The arrangement seemed reasonable to everyone involved. While Alyssa wasn't thrilled about interacting with Trevor, she chose to keep things calm and civil. Trevor appeared composed, showing no signs of aggression, and successfully lulled Alyssa into believing he had moved on. Then, in March 2017, he called her unexpectedly. He asked her to come over to sign papers related to their divorce and property division. His tone was polite, and nothing about the request raised suspicion. Alyssa drove to his house, where Trevor greeted her at the door and invited her in. As soon as the door closed behind her, his demeanor shifted entirely. It quickly became clear there were no documents. This was a setup. Trevor had orchestrated the request to get Alyssa alone without their children present. At first, he tried to convince her to reconcile, but when Alyssa firmly refused, he became threatening. He accused her of betrayal, hurled insults, and blocked her from leaving. He demanded she admit to fabricated wrongs, fixating on imaginary grievances. When Alyssa attempted to walk away, Trevor grabbed a large hunting knife, the kind used for field dressing game, and held it to her throat. Then he lowered it to her chest, threatening to take her heart out. Alyssa froze in fear as Trevor described in chilling detail what he intended to do next. Trevor held Alyssa captive for nearly 2 hours, hours that felt like an eternity. The entire time, she pleaded with him to stop, reminding him that if he hurt her, he'd end up in prison and their children would be left without either parent. She begged him not to make them orphans. Surprisingly, her words seemed to reach him. Trevor paused, thought it over, and ultimately decided to let her go. Before releasing her, he made Alyssa promise never to tell anyone what had happened. She gave her word. The moment Alyssa was far enough from the house, she contacted law enforcement and reported the threats and aggression. Trevor was arrested that same evening. Still, he denied everything, calling Alyssa a habitual liar and accusing her of betrayal and manipulation. With no visible marks on her body and her clothing intact, physical evidence was lacking, making it difficult to prove the assault had occurred. It became a case of her word against his. With no hard evidence to hold him, Trevor was released. Both he and Alyssa filed for mutual restraining orders, but the damage had already been done. In the weeks that followed, Trevor turned his attention toward the children. He began a quiet campaign, emotional manipulation masked as concern. Every conversation dripped with nostalgia. He told them their mother had ruined the family, that all he wanted was to put the pieces back together. He took them to old vacation spots and favorite restaurants, deliberately pulling them into memories of a time when things felt whole. The youngest clung to the idea of normalcy. They wanted to believe their father had good intentions, but it was Arden, the eldest, who became the most vulnerable. She had always seen Trevor as infallible, a man who could do no wrong, and Trevor knew it. He leaned into her loyalty, quietly making her the cornerstone of a chilling plan. The children had never seen the side of Trevor Alyssa had come to fear. He never raised a hand or raised his voice in front of them. And Alyssa, trying to shield them from pain, had never told them what he was capable of. That silence gave Trevor room to operate. Soon, at his urging, the children began monitoring their mother, taking mental notes, reporting back, sharing routines, repeating things she said, things she did. Behind the scenes, Trevor and Arden were coordinating something far more sinister than reconciliation. On Saturday, March 11th, 2017, Trevor picked up the younger kids for their weekend visit. That night, he returned to Alyssa's home. Headlights off, car parked down the side of the house. He waited quietly in the dark for Arden's signal. She was to crack open her mother's bedroom window once everyone had gone to bed. This wasn't a reunion. It was a setup. Once Trevor saw the signal, he turned to the younger children, instructing them to remain silent. He told them he was about to surprise their mother. Then, he slipped through the unlocked window and into the darkness of the house. Inside, Alyssa had no warning. In the pitch black, Trevor ambushed her. He dragged her into the living room, took her phone, and bound her wrists tightly with a cable tie. Startled by the commotion, the children followed, their small footsteps echoing down the hallway. When they saw what was happening, panic filled their eyes. But Trevor met them with a calm voice. He told them to return to their room. He said everything would be all right. Then, he turned to Arden, 14 years old, a child forced into a role far beyond her years. He handed her the keys to his car and told her to drive her younger siblings to his house. She protested. She did not have a license. She had never driven that far alone. But Trevor insisted. He told her it was the only way, that she could do it, that their mother and father would be right behind them, driving together in Alyssa's SUV. From that night forward, he said their family would be whole again. With no choice, and a heart full of confusion and hope, Arden obeyed. She drove off into the night. The roads were empty. Silence wrapped around them. She parked in the driveway of Trevor's house. The children went inside and waited, but their parents never arrived. Back at the house, Trevor returned to Alyssa. What followed was hours of cruelty and psychological torment. He injected her with a sedative he had prepared beforehand, something meant to weaken her, to strip away her ability to fight back. As the drug took hold, Trevor dragged her into the bedroom and restrained her to the bed. What happened next was an act of violence that defies comprehension. Alyssa drifted in and out of consciousness, but Trevor kept her from slipping away entirely. He wanted her aware. He wanted her to remember. In those hours, he spoke of grand plans, of hidden money in offshore accounts, of a yacht he had supposedly purchased, and a dream of fleeing to a remote place with Alyssa and the children. He told her they were his, that she belonged to him, that none of them were going anywhere unless he allowed it. At approximately 5 a.m., the abuse escalated. Trevor began to suffocate Alyssa with a pillow, pressing it against her face, then pulling it away, allowing her to gasp for breath, only to press it down again. He repeated this over and over. For 30 minutes, she endured the cycle: suffocation, release, breath, panic, until completely broken, Alyssa gave in. She agreed to whatever he demanded. He untied her, placed her in the vehicle, and drove off into the early morning silence. At around 6 a.m., a vehicle pulled into the parking lot of a small, 24-hour convenience store on the edge of the city. A man stepped out and walked inside. Moments later, the passenger door opened. A barefoot woman, partially clothed with her wrists still bound, stumbled out of the car. She ran toward a store employee who had been standing outside. Her voice trembled as she begged for help. She had escaped, but the nightmare was far from over. Suddenly, the man came running back out of the store, grabbed Alyssa while she was trying to run, and forced her into the car. The car drove away fast before the shocked witness could do anything, but he had seen enough to know he had just watched a kidnapping. Luckily, he was able to remember the type, color, and even the license plate number of the car, and quickly gave that information to the police. The police used the license plate to find the owner of the car. What they learned worried them right away. The name was connected to a current restraining order, a messy divorce, and reports of controlling behavior. The most important thing now was finding the couple's children to make sure they were safe. The children were at Trevor's house, but none of them knew where their parents were or what was going on. They were confused and did not realize the scary things happening somewhere else. The young witnesses were talked to one by one with care, and what they said showed a troubling life inside the Summers home. The children had not understood how bad things really were. They were never hurt by their father, so his controlling ways and how he treated their mother just seemed normal to them. But the things they told the police made it clear Alyssa was in serious danger and needed to be found fast. By that time, Trevor and his hostage were already far from the city, moving toward a lonely area near the coast. He stopped at a small hotel they had stayed at before as a family. For a moment, he seemed lost in old memories, but then his mood changed suddenly. Trevor said he had thought of a way to fix everything. He took out a notebook and pen and started writing what looked like a goodbye letter. Then, unhappy with it, he ripped out the page, crushed it, and tried again. This went on for hours. Alyssa understood that he was planning to kill her, and then himself, using the letter to explain everything to their children. After Alyssa's failed escape in the supermarket parking lot, security cameras had spotted their car, helping police figure out which way they were going. The search took 55 hours. During that time, Trevor wrote several goodbye notes and used a razor blade to cut Alyssa's wrist, trying to make it seem like she had hurt herself on purpose. Finally, Trevor took her to Little Harbor, a small town by the coast. There, he attacked her again and told her they would both die soon. He wrapped a rough rope around Alyssa's neck and began choking her. But just then, police sirens sounded close by. Trevor let go and ran to the car, slamming the gas pedal to get away, only to crash right into a police car. Seeing no escape, Trevor grabbed a razor and tried to cut himself, but only made small wounds. Thankfully, officers got there just in time. They took the razor from him, pulled him out of the car, and saved Alyssa. Both were taken to the hospital for urgent medical care. After his arrest, Trevor insisted he had done nothing wrong. He said Alyssa had chosen to go with him, and even claimed she had asked him to tie her up, choke her, and take part in violent acts. He tried to say they both liked dangerous and controlling behavior. Of course, no one believed him. The prosecutors charged him with 11 crimes, including kidnapping, attack, and trying to kill her. The court process moved slowly, and when the pandemic hit in 2020, the trial was postponed with no new date set. Luckily, Trevor was not allowed bail and stayed in jail for almost 5 years while waiting for his trial. During that time, Alyssa started a new life. She married her partner, Jeffrey Matt, who helped raise her children as if they were his own. Even though Trevor and his lawyer tried hard to prove he was innocent, the evidence showed the truth. Some of the strongest proof against him included the many goodbye notes found in the car, the witness who saw Alyssa try to escape, the homemade rope used to choke her, and the bloody razor blade left at the scene. In the spring of 2022, Trevor Summers was found guilty of every charge. He was given 3 life sentences in a row with no chance of ever getting out. The most important testimony that helped convict him came from his own children, who bravely told the court what they had seen during that terrifying time. For the first time, they truly realized how close their mother had been to being killed. Thank you for watching, everyone. Your support means so much to me. If you want to help my channel grow, please give this video a like, leave a comment, and share with others. Your interaction really makes a difference. See you next time.